Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Dog Pound. We are just kicking it. We're having a good time. We took a little bit of a break to do a Survivor fantasy draft. Michael, my daughter, and Ryan were joining me on that one, but we are back to talk Night of the Seven Kingdoms again. We're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to record episodes 4, 5, and 6, but we're going to start off with episode 4, which is titled 7. And we are joined by Michael Gonzalez and Athena Delgado once again. Unfortunately, no Trey Ryder. So once again, we'll try and see if we can get him in with the House of the Dragon, which is just right around the corner. I'm looking forward to that rewatch. I'm currently rewatching The Boys as they're getting ready to release their final season. I don't know how I'll recap that one. Maybe one per season or something like that, but we'll have some fun with it. We're also going to watch The Bluff this week, an Amazon movie, a pirate show, which is going to be a lot of fun. So if you guys are into pirates or if you just want to see what I'm doing, tune into that one. But Michael, how you doing?
Good, man. I'm doing good. Yeah, took a little break with you guys and ready to finish out this season.
Yeah, you're becoming quite the regular on the show. So I have to start
Yeah.
paying you here in a little bit. Athena, how are you?
Wally.
Doing good.
Doing good. All right. Love to see it. So I appreciate everybody who's been following along in the first 3 episodes. Again, this is a lot of fun for us to do the George R.R. Martin reveals. One thing about Night of the Seven Kingdoms, he does consider this his baby. House of the Dragon, I believe he's kind of a hands-off approach now. So if you guys are just tuning in, do not do that. Go back, watch the first episode, and then watch what we had to say about it. And then watch the second episode, watch the second episode we did, and go back and forth until we're all the way caught up. Again, this is a small series, only 6 episodes. And Michael, we're just talking about it off screen. They're smaller episodes. So, about 30, 35 minutes, you feel a little underwhelmed. I know last time Athena wanted more. How do you feel about the length of the episodes?
Needs to be more. There's so much more to say and so much that is not being told. Don't like it.
Yeah. Michael, what about you?
Yeah, I think they're short too. I feel like, we're used to Game of Thrones series, getting an hour an episode. And then the seasons, we're used to seeing these seasons eclipse like years of time, maybe. And this one seems pretty short.
Yeah, I think the one thing about this, though, is that, again, they're trying to, I guess, cram the event of this, wedding weekend, which is really all about the jousting events and the festivities, but they're really just kind of telling a story about Dunk and Egg. And I feel like if we're going to get hour-long episodes, we need to cram that in with filler of some sort. And I'm kind of glad they're not giving us a bunch of useless crap, Like, I don't need to know the background of some characters that might not be there down the road. But I'm getting the impression this series is going to solely focus on Dunk and Egg and their journeys. We'll get into that once we get a little bit further down into episode 6 and talk about the season as a whole. But let's go ahead and get into it if you guys are ready. Episode 4. You good? All right. A couple thumbs up. Here we go. Episode number 4, the 7. We start things off with Dunk basically locked up and in jail. And we get to see Prince Egg as he comes in looking all Targaryened up. He has to apologize, even though Dunk is pissed. Dunk still can't stop eating because, let's face it, he's hungry. He's been eating salt beef for who knows how long. And even the prison food is better than what he's been eating. But then we get basically a messenger saying that Baylor wants to have a chat with Dunk. And he's already like, I've already disappointed one prince. I don't want to do it again. So let's go. They have their conversation, and he wants to know how good he is at actual fighting because he's basically putting Inception out there that he wants him to have a trial by combat for Arian. And I find this kind of interesting because, that's one hand you got family, and on the other hand, you got what we consider to be a good person in Baylor and another good person in Dunk. So it's kind of interesting, Athena, how that we get this almost planting of the seed from Baylor into Dunk's head about the trial by combat. So before you get into that scene, tell us what trial by combat actually is.
So this part I actually like a lot because it kind of combines, I guess, the real world sort of with what we have, where it combines your religion and your politics and it all gets smushed into one. So essentially, the trial by combat is a divine judgment. So it's a judgment pretty much by the gods. Now, this does go all the way back to the Andals, and it's interesting because in Game of Thrones, if you watched it, for some reason I cannot think of his name right now, but he's a Dothrakian, and he goes off of kind of explaining a little bit of what the history is. So it's the faith of seven. So you have your father, mother, oh my gosh, warrior, maiden, I'm going to forget someone, crone, stranger, smith. I think that's all of them. I could be missing those.
Good to me.
I think that's so you have all these parts that go into it. And so essentially what it is pretty much in their minds, if, you know, the faith of seven, the divine seven, if they deem you worthy or of truth, then you're innocent. And if you die, well, then you weren't innocent. And either way, the death is by execution regardless. So it doesn't even matter. But that's
so basically whatever's supposed to happen will happen. If you're supposed to die because you're guilty, this will make up for it in the long run.
Yep, exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so let's talk about this scene real quick. Michael, what do you think about Baylor basically planting the seed to suggest trial by combat rather than Dunk, who looks very, very defeated, just willing to give up his arm, or I guess his hand and his foot for punching and kicking Arian?
Yeah, at this point, I wasn't too sure why he was doing that early on, and I think he's kind of foreshadowing, you know, things to come. But it's almost like a jab, either at his brother or his nephews, kind of just secretly kind of sliding one on them.
Yeah. So again, we go back through the chain of commands, I guess you will, or the inheritance rights. Baylor is next in line over Maker. Maker is probably not even on the radar as far as becoming king. So it's not like he's doing this to, you know, undercut him and make a quick path to the throne. I think he's planting the seeds to just make it right. So we go from here into the courtroom, and Athena kind of talked about how things were a little bit more controlled in this Targaryen realm than what we're used to seeing. Mm-hmm. So they're actually having a discussion about it, and most of them are taking it seriously, with the exception of Arian, who's just off casually crushing his nuts and demeaning. I don't know who this guy is, but he's like, hey, can you drop my nut? Can you pick that up for me real quick? And he's got the guy on all fours crawling underneath the table to pick it up. And I think that's just, you know, hilarious that he just doesn't care. But at the same time, we get to see how cunning he is, because he does suggest, you know, he's offered this trial by combat. He says, no, I refuse. I want a trial by 7. And then his dad just cracks me up. He's like, what the fuck is a trial by 7? So nobody knows about this trial by 7 except for Baylor, it seems like. And even Dunk is just so confused, which makes the scene a little bit more interesting. So yeah, he's basically wanting a trial by 7. So Athena, explain to us what a trial by 7 is. And then Michael, I want your opinion on why he's actually asking for a trial by 7.
Asking for a trial by 7 because he's a chicken. It's insane. It's, again, it goes back to, you know, their old age, you know, religious views and things like that. Now, it's not common, you know, even in all the different Game of Thrones, you know, groups or things, it's not something that's super common. You hear it very rarely ever happening, but essentially what it is you need to find, it's 7 versus 7, and you need to find 6 other people to battle alongside you who believe in your innocence, and enough so that they're willing to die for you. And so that's what makes it so difficult, and that's what makes it so rare, because you also have people, you know, this is probably something mostly from, you know, the princes and all of, you know, the fancy folk, where they can surely say whatever it is that they want because they can get the best of the best. They are paying half of the people there so they can get who they want to fight against them. And the person who has to find people are typically the ones who will probably lose. And they have to get 7 people total. If you don't meet that number, then you pretty much die. You're donezo. So it's crazy. Yeah, you're guilty all in all, because they're like, well, the gods have said if you can't find all these other people who want to, you know, fight alongside you, then you're not worthy, which means that the gods don't deem you good enough to even step foot into that type of, you know, tournament. So it's wild the way they even portray it in the show. I think they did an interesting job. They added a little bit more humor to it, I think, but it was pretty interesting the way that they did. I think they did a pretty good job compared to the book.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's interesting that they even have a trial by 7 because it kind of makes sense. Like if you look at Game of Thrones, the Mountain could just go around and do whatever he wants and destroy towns, villages, people, and just be like, "I'm not guilty." Trial by combat, and just destroy everybody. So it's kind of a way of evening the playing field in case you do have that dominant guy, but it's almost pointless if you got 7 dominant people. But Michael, why do you think Arian is asking for a trial by 7 instead of just 1v1?
Yeah, a little bit like Athena said, it goes back to us getting that vibe that he's a spoiled prince, and maybe he'll make a claim but doesn't want to have to back it up 1v1. And then obviously Dunk is huge, and so he's probably questioning his strength in that. But like Athena said, if you can call for 7, well, he can get Knights Guards, he can get a lot of people on his side, and so if he feels like that gives him the upper hand. And this was a little bit of a comedy in that section because, as you mentioned, Wally, Dunk's like, "Does that mean I have to fight 7?" Like, he's like, "No, you have to find 7."
Yeah, then Arian's like, "Don't be a fool," but Dunk is actually a fool. He has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
All right, so one thing that I find interesting about this whole setup is that, if Arian loses, nothing happens. Like it's just over. Dunk is innocent, and then we move on. But if Dunk wins, then what does that even mean? There's no punishment for accusing him of what he's basically accusing him of, which is basically Dunk is getting accused of 1, punching and kicking him, which happened. We all saw it, and then the second one is kidnapping Egg, which did not happen. But it's basically a lot of people against Dunk, and Dunk is just defending himself. And even if Dunk comes out of this a winner, I don't see a version of this where he's respected by the top people. That he's basically there to get respect from. He's looking to get a job. He's looking to cling to a house of some sort. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation for Dunk, and now he's just fighting for his life. But let's get back into it. Dunk is, trying to find his 7. Sir Fossaway is there to hype him up, and Sir Fossaway is one of the Apple Boys. I can't remember if it's green or red. I'm terrible at this. Athena, help me out. Is it the green one?
Green. It's green. He loves the green ones. Even speed. Yeah, he's the green.
Okay, so he's hyping Dunk up, and I got this scene as him basically saying, "I got your back, brother. 7, no problem. You're fighting for a good cause. Screw the Targaryens. I got your back." And I bought it. I'm into it. I believe everything he's got to say. And then Egg and Darren show up a little bit after that. We discover that Darren is a little bit of a dream seer in himself, and that he is, saying he sees Dunk standing over a dragon, which is very interesting because there's a lot of dragons at play here. One, he's getting ready to go head to head with Aaron, so there's a dragon, or Arion, there's a dragon. And then 2, Egg is, now we discovered, a dragon, and he's basically, is he like one of these things where you're holding the body of your best friend, you're responsible for getting him killed, or Maker, or what could possibly happen there. So kind of interesting that Darren has this little seeing element. We saw him at the very first episode in the inn, just passed out drunk. We find out he's a big drunk, and he's carrying this. I don't think it was the dagger that we talked about, Michael. He's got this blade, and he's like, "I dreamt of you." So it's interesting. Do you take that as being the same dream that he's discussing here about towering over the dragon, or do you think it was just a dream of, "I seen you come into our life somehow"?
Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly when I was watching. I actually got the feeling it was like further down the line, like they're talking, like he was looking way into the future. So it's interesting to see how that played out.
Yeah, I think that it was basically one big dream, and that it means something a little bit more. I don't know how we can discuss it without spoilers, so let's just kind of move on. But the one thing I like about this show is that it could be one meaning or something like that takes us down one path, and then if it's a different person or a different meaning, it takes us down another path. So if you're not a book reader like Michael and I think that it leaves a lot of questions as how this is going to play out. But Athena, at this point, are you pretty much locked in that you already know what's going to happen? You're like, let's just get over with it. Or do you like how they're portraying it?
A little bit of both. Like it's interesting being able to actually see like a live action version of it, and does it match the version that was in my head, sort of thing. The one thing though, I mean, I like it so far, but the one thing that I wish they did more of is in the book, they're in Dunk's head a lot. So you hear him talking to himself, but I don't really know how they could have put that in the TV show without making it like weird. I don't know. I know how you make that crazy. It would have definitely made it seem super crazy, but there's some parts where it's like you kind of see him and it's kind of like staring off in space, or he just seems super confused. But then there's like times like, and I'm trying to remember back into parts of the book where like he's just repeating the same lines over and over, but in his head. And I think those are some important parts that I wish they would have thrown in there. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. But yeah, there's some stuff that I think you learn more of the backstory, kind of what you were saying earlier, Wally, how, there's some characters are like, we don't really need their backstories, but it's interesting because there's some of their backstories that actually tie into even the final episode that had you known then, fast forwarding to that one. And then it even ties it into the Game of Thrones and, all of it. It's just, it's interesting. So I wish I knew more, whereas you're like, meh.
Okay, well, maybe that's something that we could have used to, I think 45-minute episodes would have been good. Add another 10 minutes on or something. But we get what we get. Unfortunately, HBO has a budget and that one's making it all, and we're just watching. But next we go to a scene where Dunk is getting his shield, and he talks with Steely Pate. So let's take a look at this. Steely Pate handing over Dunk his shield.
Stars falling. The sunset heralds night. The shield is all painted up like death.
The elm's alive, man. See how green the leaves are? That's summer leaves for certain. You remember the old shield rhyme? Oak and iron, guard me well, or else I'm dead and doomed to hell. How much do you want for the new rim and all? From you, a copper.
All right, so kind of a longer clip, but I wanted to get all that in there because this is interesting that, Dunk is being negative Nancy, as, depressive as can be in this situation, almost kind of wondering what's the point. And from the tone that we've gotten from the episodes so far, I expected Steely Pate to just do one beard tug and smack Dunk across the face and be like, snap out of it. You got a chore you got to do. But instead he takes a soft approach and trying to spin it around and talking about, this is life. The tree is in full blossom. The grass is green. Everything is great. So let's kind of talk about that scene, Athena. What do you think?
I think that it goes a lot deeper in the book because he's really like tying everything together. So he connects it more to like hope. And that's kind of like what he thinks. It's like, again, in his mind, all that's happening in his mind. He's thinking like, hope and, growth and things like that. But then he starts kind of thinking back on like fortunes or fortune telling, but like some the parts of it are symbols of death also, with like the shooting star, like it's moving on, it's going past. So there's like all these things. And so I think it's an important part, but it's also very interesting because this is the part that intrigued me the most, because his shield, if you look at Brienne of Tarth's shield and the similarities to the descriptions of the two, they are super, super, super similar. And their stories are very close as well. So it's like a strange connection where, again, you have like the fandom where everyone's like, oh, they're related somehow, or there's something. And I don't know if they're fully related or if it's just like I don't know, like there's some weird nugget that connects them. But seeing the way that they did it in the show, I don't know if that was intentional. to make it look very similar to Brienne of Tarth's.
Okay.
Which also made me internally think that the shooting star, where it's like, his lifeline, like, does that then, like with the tree, how it grows, you plant a seed, and is that now Brienne of Tarth? Is she essentially the him of her time? But it's crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, there are some similarities there with them because they are some of the most noble people in the entire, universe that we've discovered so far. So, we'll get into now the characters that we basically get to back Dunk in his trial by 7, and we find out that it's like a lot of misfit toys in a way. You got one guy with a broken leg who can't walk, he can't get off the horse. Obviously, we still don't know about Dunk. Lionel, you never know what you're going to get. We did see him in action a little bit before. He looks like he can hold his own, but at the same time, we've also seen him not take things seriously by leaving the tug of war line, getting drunk, and just turning dancing into a foot stomping competition. So it's kind of interesting. But Michael, I'm not sure if you remember the players on Dunk's side or not. What do you think about his suicide squad of sorts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree with you. It's like a batch of misfit toys. Still has Sir Fossaway, who seemingly is a good fighter. You assume Dunk is going to hold his own, but he's still trying to piece it together, and you're not sure yet. Does he? I think he has 6 right now, and it just seems like not likely to win.
Yeah, they basically are saying, "Oh crap, we're still short-handed. It looks like the battle's getting ready to start," and then enter in the Targaryen battles or contestants. I guess they're a little bit short as well, so they're getting a little bit of hope, like, oh, maybe this whole thing's just going to get canceled. But then that piece of shit Green Apple Fossaway comes up, and he's like, "No, actually, they got 7, and you guys got 5. So I'm gonna go fight over there and get me an entire." Castle and land and a wifey, and we're gonna come over here and stomp you. But good luck to you. And we find out that Egg is the one who actually recruited all these people. It wasn't Fossaway at all. So Fossaway is just basically telling Dunk, "Hey, trust me, I got you." And then it turns out that he wasn't having his back at all. And then the next scene is, I believe, yes, Dunk is asked to knight Raymond Fossaway. And we discover that Dunk is a little hesitant to knight him, which brings up multiple questions in my head. And Michael, I want to start with you before we get into Athena. As you can tell, she's giddy to talk about this moment. But Michael, what does this mean to you that Dunk is hesitant to knight Raymond Fossaway?
Yeah, it's twofold. It kind of brings up the point again: is Dunk a knight himself? Was he knighted? But then they leave a little bit there for you because he's actually being interrupted by the speed of this needing to pick up, and he actually needs to go make sure they find somebody. So it's not necessarily clear that Dunk couldn't knight him, but there's some hesitation there, and then they pull him away because he's got to get this going. He's got to find help and additional fighters.
Yeah, so I find this very interesting multiple ways because even if they knight Raymond, they're still shorthanded. So the next thing that they could do is they could knight Dunk, and then Dunk would be there, and we know that the King's Guard can't fight Dunk. Arian is probably going to be all about trying to kill Dunk now. I'm sorry, Egg. So I don't know if I said that right, but I figured they would knight Egg and basically use him as a shield of sorts, but they would still be short. And I think the hesitation from Dunk is like, I don't want to be responsible for knighting you and have something happen to you. But then Lionel comes along and he decides to knight him. So Athena, do you feel, I'll let you talk about this scene as a whole, but I want to ask you, do you feel like Lionel is picking up on any suspicion of Dunk being knighted or not being knighted?
Oh, for sure. He can instantly tell the hesitation, because even right there at the end, he's like, okay, well, go ahead. You can do it. Any knight can knight somebody, kind of reaffirming that to him. And again, this is one of those parts where in the book, during this particular scene, he's saying to himself, Sir Arlen never said the words. Like, he never says them. So that's what's going through his mind. So for us, we see silence in the book. He's repeating that in his head. Like, he's still so unsure. And again, he's trying to be so what would a knight be? How can I be this kind of person? And how am I honorable? And he doesn't feel that it's honorable to knight someone when he doesn't even know if he was actually knighted himself.
Interesting. Yeah, because there's a lot of ramifications for all this stuff, because I wonder how the realm would take it. As of right now, everyone is viewing Dunk as a knight. So I don't know. I've watched the entire season. I still don't know if Dunk is a knight or not. But if we find out that Dunk is not a knight, and then later on that comes into a question, now is Raymond a knight because he was false knighted? You know what I mean? So the fallout, the butterfly effects from this series, I just find so fascinating, because we never know what's going to end up happening down the road from the decisions that Dunk or Egg make in this. And I think that's just the fascinating part about this story here by George R.R. Martin. So Dunk is, again, like Mike was talking about, pulled aside. He goes to the crowd to try and round up, I guess, and get the crowd rowdy and in his corner. So he gives this big, long speech. Let's take a look at this.
A knight defends the innocent. That's all I did. I was not Sir Erland's blood, but I have followed his example, as your sons will follow yours. Who will stand and fight with me?
All right. A lot to unpack there in that scene, but I mean, I had to include it. I think it was going down as one of the best fart jokes in TV history, to be honest with you. They do a great job of setting this scene up by showing all the father-son combos and then having this big guy. You know what I mean? Like, if it was me, the scene doesn't go over very well. But this is a big guy and this is what Dunk looks like he needs in his corner. Looks right over at his son, and he's like, he's right. I got to stand up and back Duck up. But no, instead he stands up, true Game of Thrones fashion, just drops a big old fart and again, shits all over his parade. So what do you guys think about this moment? And what do you think about Dunk's speech? Athena, let's start with you.
Love the speech. Completely hate the moment. It's like, no. I mean, it is hilarious, though. It does make it really funny. You see it, you're like, okay, this is going on. All of a sudden he stands and everyone's waiting in anticipation, and then he does that. Now, obviously for TV, it's comedic gold, but in the book, it's more of an awkward moment sort of thing than it wasn't, I don't think, fully meant to be a comedic part of it, but it's funny. But it's interesting because it's like when it describes it, he's talking and it's complete stillness. It's saying it's the quiet stillness of the entire gathering. I mean, you're talking hundreds of people and it is so silent. And then all of a sudden it's broken from, a noise, and it's more so nerves. So the fart was because of this guy getting so scared and so nervous, like, what if I'm voluntold sort of deal? And then that happens. So it's a little bit different, but it provided the same thing. So
all right, Michael, did it sell it to you that this guy was going to stand up and back Dunk?
Yeah, it did. So that's interesting insight from the book side. But yeah, it sold it for me. I was like, it's actually a classic Game of Thrones speech. It's powerful. Everyone's watching. Dunk. This is a moment for Dunk where he seems really, confident in the speech, and then just spoils it. And like we talked about a couple episodes ago, there's a lot of like comedic aspects to this Knight of Seven Kingdoms, which you didn't really find as much in House of Dragon or Game of Thrones. There's some comedy stuff in there, but this kind of takes it to another level, like breaks the seriousness with a joke often. And this was one of those moments where, they had me hooked. I was hook, line, and sinker. And then I was like, oh yeah, still in a bad spot.
Yeah, I had no idea. I didn't see it coming because I feel like we saw this guy before. I couldn't remember if he was a main character or not. At first, I kind of thought it was Steely Pate, because he's a big guy. They have the same face, but I forgot to see he's bald. But either way, it was really, really good. And I think Dunk was actually getting through to the people. You know what I mean? I think his speech was working, and you get a look at that family. I guess the father son right in front of the guy who did the fart joke, and you almost kind of think like, okay, that guy's going to stand up and defend his son or whatever, But anyway, after this scene, Dunk goes back into giving another speech, and then we get what I think is one of the most heroic moments in this entire season. So let's take a look at this clip real quick.
And there's no true knight among you. I will take the Duncan side.
All right, so there we go. So that's the first time since the opening crap scene that we get the Game of Thrones soundtrack, and it is actually a heroic moment for Baylor. You can see Makor coming up right behind him, like, dude, what are you doing? But it actually shows Egg's face at the end, which I think is kind of nice too, because you get to be like, oh man, there is a little bit of hope here. And I like how they bring it up with a little bit of mystery. Not sure if you caught it, Michael, or not, but this is the same armor that was on his son. I'm terrible with the names. Athena, help me out. This is Baylor's son, Damon. Is that it?
Yes, Damien.
Damien. Either way,
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting there, but he does back him up, and now just like that, Michael, we got our 7. So Baylor swinging toward that side. What do you think about the final 7 that we get to back Dunk up?
Yeah, this scene right here you just showed, that's a huge turning point, I feel like, in the whole season. This was a major moment, and I was confused by it watching it, not sure why he would actually come down to make that fight, but it really changed the outlook and changed the future for this whole season.
All right, so you have it, episode number 4. It's kind of a longer episode for us, but I feel like there was a lot to unpack here, even though it was kind of just a basically introduction to each squad, and then we get at it. So, Athena, I'm going to start with you. How many bones are we throwing at episode number 4 here?
Episode 4. I'll give it 4, just because I really, really liked the scene for Baylor. I think that was done perfectly and exactly how it would have been pictured. But the fart makes me want to give it less than that, but we'll go with 4.
All right, 4 bones with a warning to the fart jokes. Tone it down a little bit. Michael, what do you say?
This one's the first one. I'm going to give a 5. I thought this one really carried the story from where it started in the beginning of the season. It really was a turning point in the story, and they did a very good job of it. I'm going to go 5.
All right, 5. So we got 9 overall, 9 bones for this episode. Our first perfect score from Michael's side. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back with another episode, episode number 5, which is titled "In the Name of the Mother." After this break, see you guys.